welcome to this week's episode of Tired and Thriving, a podcast that recognizes just how tired and exhausted we all are while discussing ways to still thrive. Whether it's something big like going to see Beyonce live or something small like hugging your best friend, it's all good ways to thrive. I'm your host, Samantha Gray, and this week's guest is Grace Edwards. Grace is an actor, writer, producer, creator, and executive producer. She's written on some amazing shows like Insecure, Survival of the Thickest, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and Mr. Mayor. She's also created and executive produced the upcoming animated movie Jodie. Thank you so much for being here with me, Grace.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
Wow, you
And
have
by the
like a
way,
repertoire.
she didn't mention it, but that's how I know Sam. She's the incredible director of Jodie. So I was very excited to hear that she was doing podcasts. So I'm very happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, thanks, Grace. um, So I want to rewind and pull back to when you got into writing.
Hmm.
I just want to know what was your path into becoming a writer and getting to the point of success you have now.
Um, well, I was always a kid who loved books. So, I was pretty much kind of bullied in school. I was like one of the only Black
Oh
kids
no.
in this little Catholic school in Royal Oak. So, books were my friends. So I used to live across the street from the library in a place called Oak Park, Michigan, and I would be friends with the librarians. So I would always love to read, but I never processed that as I wanted to become a writer. I was more interested in acting, as
Mm.
most probably little girls do. Like, I want to become an actress and all this different stuff. So that was sort of the beginning of my path. Like, I was Dorothy and the Wiz in high school, and Sarah and Guys and Dolls, and like really committed myself to acting in high school. And then I went to University of Michigan, where I have a BFA in acting and a BA in English. So
Ooh.
yeah, it was a terrible experience.
Oh no.
Did not love Michigan. Actually, probably nothing in Michigan. No shade to the Michiganders who are listening, but Michigan was never the right place for a person like me to bloom.
Mm.
So I really did bloom when I left Michigan after college. About a year later, I moved to New York to pursue acting. And very quickly, I just realized there just wasn't a lot of stuff out there for me. There was just, I'm a Black woman, darker than a paper bag. There just was not a lot of opportunities. So, and I was just getting frustrated going to these auditions that were just so different than how I have experienced life. So
Mm.
I decided to learn how to write for myself as an actor. So
Oh.
I went to this continuing education class at NYU taught by this drunk British guy who was going through a divorce and would talk about it in front of class and sometimes take calls from his divorce lawyer in front of class. So I didn't really learn a ton about writing except for like the very basics. But I met this Asian actress who had the same struggles. So she was like, yeah, there's not a lot of stuff for me. It's probably even worse for her. So she told me about this free class that was co-taught between Columbia University and the Writers Guild of America East for the Harlem community. So the deadline had passed, but I just reached out to them anyway. And I was like, I would love to come to this class. And they accepted me. And so, I wasn't really taking it seriously. I was in a play at the time, and my play was every other week. So I'd go to class every other week, and I go to my play every other week. And so one week, one of the professors, Jamal Joseph, said to me, he's like, well, if you apply to Columbia this year, I'll write you a letter of recommendation because I can see you have some talent. And so I was just like, oh, okay, well, why not like at least apply? So I applied and got in and considered not going because it's a lot of money. Columbia is
Yeah.
not cheap. And my parents were like, "Listen, we paid for that first degree, girl, but we're not going to pay for another impractical degree. We're not going to pay. We already paid for an acting degree, an English degree. We ain't paying for film degree."
Mhm.
So I was like, all right. So I decided to take on the loans, which, I still haven't paid off, unfortunately. But that's sort of what marked my transition. While I was there, I studied, I was hoping to become like more of a dramatic writer, but the
Mm.
first thing that I wrote, I was intending it to be sort of Charlie Kaufman esque, like dark comedy, like witty, and people were
Mhm.
laughing, and I was upset because I was just like, wait, this is not what I intended. And my teacher, Andy Beenan, I will never forget. He said this to me. He's like, "Don't try to force your writing to be something that it isn't." And so
Oh,
from then
wow.
on, I started embracing comedy. I There was an internship that is no longer present, which makes me sad because it was a good one. It was at Comedy Central. It's called the Rock Turn Program, and it was started by Chris Rock. And so it was a
Mm.
paid internship. It wasn't very much money, but it was, something. And I did that in the summer of 2009, and right before I graduated from film school in 2010. And so there I met Dan Powell, who would eventually go on to be the showrunner of Inside Amy Schumer. So after I graduated in 2010, I told him, I was like, yo, I'll work cheap. I was like, I ain't got nothing. I know have no nepotism. Like my parents are Caribbean immigrants from Michigan. So like I just need a foot in the door. And so I bothered him for about a year. And then about a year later, he had a job for me as a production coordinator at Ugly Americans, a animated show. So my
Mhm.
first show was animated. And then as Dan got chosen to be the showrunner of Inside Amy Schumer, I asked, could I be the writer's assistant over there? And, I met Amy, and so I was able to make that transition. And so, yeah, so I was a writer's assistant for 4 seasons, and I got my first job. And during that time, I was making progress. I got a manager and all this different stuff.
Yeah.
And then I got my first job on Loosely Exactly Nicole with Nicole Byer. Um, and
Love
that was
her.
my first gig. And just 2 short months after I got that job, came the
Mhm.
interview for The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Um,
Oh.
and so I was still in LA working. And I used to live in New York. So I was in LA just temporarily working on Nicole's show. And so when I got that job, I was able to finish I was able to finish Nicole's show. And I I was able to finish Nicole's show and move back to New York to do Kimmy Schmidt. So
Wow.
so I did that for 2 seasons until Kimmy ended, and then I had to decide whether to stay in New York or go to LA, and I decided that the next job I got, I would move. That would be where I was said I was staying, because the back and forth between the coasts. It sounds very romantic, but in practicality, it actually is really tough if you're not rich enough to have two houses you live in. you know.
Yeah.
So it definitely wasn't. Still, am not. So I was like, oh, okay, well, we gotta move to LA, because the next show I got was Dollface, and then Insecure. And
Oh.
so the rest, is they say, is history. I've been here since 2018. And
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, I love it. Actually, oh, I forgot to ask you a question. I'm like, oh, I'm so happy to talk to you, but then I'm like, oh my gosh, I look up to you so much, so I get like a
Oh,
little
that's so
nervous.
sweet.
Uh, well, okay. So the question I actually wanted to ask, right after was, I feel like I'm always running to catch up with everything you're doing. Is there anything I missed that you want to mention that you've worked on or are currently working on?
Um, yeah, I mean, what I'm currently working on is a untitled show. We don't have a title yet, but
Mm.
it's called the Untitled Basketball Project, and it is executive produced by Mindy Kaling, Ike Barinholtz, and Dave Stassen. And it's about a fictional version of the LA Lakers, fictionalized version. And yeah, it's been a joy to work on. We had a bit of a break because we had started before, the historic writer strike, and
Mhm.
had gotten about 7 weeks in. And so we started again in October. So I've been doing that. I've been writing a romance novel. That was
Ooh.
my strike activity. That I wrote. I've loved romance novels ever since I was too young to read them, and so now I'm finally writing my own. Um, and yeah, I worked on Survival, like you mentioned, Survival of the Thickest, which came out
Mhm.
in July, which is amazing, and was really successful. So we're really hopeful that we will get a season two. Fingers crossed.
Oh, crossing my
Um,
fingers for you
yeah, we
too.
should find out soon. And Yeah, other than that, just, trying to recover from the strike. It was very emotionally distressing to a lot of us. And I was a
Yeah.
captain, so, I had responsibilities around that. And, that was all consuming in its own way,
Mhm.
really having to stay informed about everything and making sure my team had all the information they needed. And um, yeah, that's basically it. I learned how to swim. That I did that.
Oh,
I didn't know
nice.
before. So, like, just stuff like that during the strike, I was able to get done, because I didn't
Yeah.
have no job for 6 months. So yeah.
Um, when I look at your career, you've been working back to back with great content, which I feel is so amazing in such a tough contract to contract industry. Do
Mhm.
you ever get the feeling that this was something you were meant to do?
Yes. Just simply because I didn't ever intend to do it. So
Mm,
years ago, I used to be a big Oprah head. I still like her a lot, but she don't have a show no more. So,
yeah.
but I remember seeing her talking about this book that she kept on the nightstand of like all her guests when they came to visit. It was called When God Winks, right?
Mm,
And so it's basically about paying attention to the signs that God or the universe or whatever you believe is leading you along the way. So I just paid attention. Like I said, like I never intended to be a writer. I want to be an actress my whole life since I was 8 years old. So then when I got this opportunity, I took a step towards it because I took the continuing education class. But that really would have never taken me anywhere. I would have probably just taken that class and still auditioned and everything. But
mhm.
when that actress told me about the free class that was co taught between Columbia and the Writers Guild of America, I was just like, oh, the deadline had closed. I wasn't supposed to make it into this class, but I did, right?
What?
Then the guy, you know, out of nowhere just was just like, I think you have some talent. I'll write you a letter of recommendation. So anytime I feel like the universe or God is pushing me in a direction, I will try to listen and take heed. Because if I had been
Mm,
stubborn and be like, no, 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 I don't want to be anything but an actress, I might be like doing basement plays in New York right now. You know what I'm saying? You never know. I mean, I could have made it or I could have not, but what I'm always trying to do is listen for guidance from, I'm Christian, so God. So
mm.
I always try to listen, like, cuz things and people and situations will show up in your life. And even when that um guy, Andy, told me that, let your writing be what it is. Stop trying to make it something else. I might have spent
Yeah.
years trying to become the Black woman Charlie Kaufman, but no, I decided to listen to what he said. And as a result, I became this. So yes, and to this day, even the strike or whatever, I'm constantly just trying to listen to be like, what are you what did this strike tell you? Like, what
Yeah.
is it telling you about, like, what your next steps will be? Like, I obviously wrote the book, so I feel like maybe I'm being led down that path. Will it be a path
Mhm.
to supplement what I'm already doing, or will it be a completely new path? But the thing is that I'm always open to it, regardless of what happens. Like, I'm open to wherever I'm being led at the moment. So, yes, I do feel like it was meant to happen. And very strangely, or not strangely, I have ended up working with every single last one of my comedy heroes that I have ever wanted to work with. Right now, I'm working with Tracy Ellis Ross with you, right?
Uh-huh.
Loved Tracy for the longest time. I've worked with Issa Rae. I was one of those people that was watching Awkward Black Girl on the day it came out, right? Then
Wow.
Tina Fey, I've worked on two Tina Fey shows. I have development with Tina Fey. Right
Uh-huh.
now I'm working with Mindy Kaling. I've worked with Amy Poehler on Broad City. So those are the people that I have looked up to. So it just can't be an accident that I ended up working with every single last one of them, that I was available at the time when they had shows, and that I was able to cut past all the probably dozens of writers that they interviewed, to
Yeah.
end up working with them, and it's all been so instructive, and I've learned something great from each of them. So I do think that there's some aspect of synchronicity or something going on in my life. So that's why I
Mhm.
always try to listen, because I'm just like, oh well, it's brought me good things so far, so I gotta keep listening.
Yeah. I mean, all those people you named, like, amazing, amazing, talented women. So, oh my
Yes.
gosh, look up to all of them.
Mm.
So, that's so amazing that you've been able to have those experiences, the
Mhm.
synchronicities, as you say.
Yes, very blessed.
Whenever I get a chance to talk to you, you're always booked and on the go,
That's true.
which I admire because it's the quintessential head boss in charge move.
Mm.
How do you keep up with everything that you do? Is there a method to the madness, so to speak, or
Yeah, you have to prioritize things. Like, recently, like another thing that I did during the strike was I started taking a stand up class, because, I know so many stand ups, and I love stand up. I love, love, love it.
Mhm.
So, and it was great while we were on strike. But I did something that I never do. I quit that class partway through, because I realized that the book that I was writing and, my TV projects were just, I just had to prioritize them. And every time I was stepping away to go to class for 3 hours, and then practice on the weekend for 2 hours, and then spend 2 to 3 hours writing jokes, I was taking away from the other things that were higher of a priority. So the
Mm,
thing is that there are some people who will work themselves into the ground, and from I'm thinking of one specific friend, even, like, will work from morning till night. I That is not something that I have the energy to do. I've never been like, I probably have a touch of ADD. Like, I've never been the most focused, or I've never been frankly, the hardest working, even.
mhm.
But what I do is realize what is important to me, and then I put my energy there. So that is kind of how I do it. Is just like, if something is taking energy from me, and this even goes with people, human beings, friends,
Yeah.
acquaintances, mentors, whatever is in your life or whatever, if it's taking energy from you, and you have other priorities, then you just need to prioritize the things and people that are important to you. So, as much as I enjoyed that stand up class, I'm sad. I met some really great people there. They're having their stand up like graduation show this weekend, and I would have been there. I didn't regret it because I was just like, on Tuesday nights, I've been sitting there, working on my book, or I've been
Mm.
getting some rest, or, yesterday was Tuesday and I went to my friend's 40th birthday party that was at a drive-in movie.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
that that filled me up more than, doing this thing that I was like, oh, I can't quit because I don't like to think that I quit something. So I
Mhm.
think it is about figuring out what you really, really want and prioritizing that. And anything else, don't be shy to either ask for help. Like, I don't clean my house. That's not something I can expend energy on. But I do go to personal training 3 times a week. You know,
Mm.
if I were to put the energy that I do lifting weights into cleaning my house or whatever, I wouldn't need to pay somebody. But it's just sort of like, I've decided I don't cook. I have a meal delivery service. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are things that I do to conserve my energy for the things that really mean something to me.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I like that. Um, do you have any tips for anyone who wants to be as ambitious as you but doesn't know where to start or what they're doing?
Um, sure. I think ambition is something that you either have or you don't.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
think ambition is dreaming big. Like, trust me, I have so many friends that are happier than me. Like, they live somewhere like where housing is affordable, and they have like cute kids running around, and a husband, and stuff like that, and they just live a peaceful life where they're not constantly striving.
Mm.
So I think that there is something that's put in you. I don't know what it is, whether it's put in there by trauma or whatever. Because, trust me, I grew up, Black in Michigan, going to a Catholic school, where I was the only Black kid in class. So, I've had
Yeah.
plenty of trauma in my life. So I don't know if it was put there then or when it was put there, but I have this outsized desire to accomplish certain things. And I've given up a lot in my life to do that. Like,
Mm.
I was broke for a very long time. Now I've always done well in school. So, like, I could have gone to get a law degree or any type of degree. And I probably could have started making money at 25 or 26, you
Mhm.
know. But I didn't, because I just had these big dreams and outsized ambitions. So I feel like if that's in you, then you just have to answer that call and do what you can to do that. But there have been times in my life where I've either had mentees or family members that I've tried to inspire, or I've tried to like give words of whatever, but they just don't have that crazy ambition, desire, and their lives are probably better for it. You know what I'm saying? So,
Mm.
as
Mhm.
many tips as I could give them, unless you have that thing that's like in the middle of your chest that tells you that you need to have a TV show, or you need to, like, write a book, or, be known or whatever, like, you shouldn't. You shouldn't, because you're going to have to give up a lot of things, especially if you're a woman, um,
Mhm.
to have those things. I don't regret anything in my life, and I don't think that it would have been the right path for me to get married in my 20s and had a kid in my 30s. And, that's just not My particular path, I took the path I took because I couldn't help it. Like I couldn't give up. Like it was not something that felt um like I could do.
Yeah.
So, but if you do have that, whatever it is in there, just really spend a lot of time researching that thing, talk to people who do that thing. You know, if you want to be a writer, talk to other writers who are actually doing it. Like, I always tell my mentees and stuff, intern, be an assistant on a show, because sometimes you don't know what you want and don't want until you experience it. So internships are
Mhm.
really helpful. Like I did an internship at Comedy Central, like I told you. Um, and I worked I spent 2 weeks at the Daily Show and the Colbert Report. So you could say how long that ago that was. And I just realized, as much as I love those shows, variety is not for me, or like these sort of daily news type things. That was not for me. I always wanted to do like narrative and stuff. So that was
Mhm.
instructive for me. So I think figure out exactly what you want to do, talk to somebody who does that, find out their path, ask them if you can not annoyingly stay in touch with them so that you can get advice. Like, take, for example, like I tell all these little girls in particular who move here to LA, even in my acting classes that I've done, I was just like, before you sign anything, just call me and I will talk to you, tell you whether this is something that will be you should be signing. And if I
Oh,
can't tell you, I will
wow.
ask my agent or I'll ask my manager or whatever, but just don't be out here like this. Now, not a lot of people have taken me up on that. But the point is that you need to talk to somebody who's actually doing it, to figure out if it's even, because sometimes you can spend energy. Because I always loved the Daily Show. Like
Mhm.
I could have expended so much energy for so many years, trying to get into that room and then realize on day one it wasn't for me. You know.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to find mentors who want to invest in you, and get advice from those people, because especially if you're like me, I don't even have roots in this country. I was born in
Mhm.
Guyana and my parents are from the Caribbean, so like I didn't like, even some things about how the country works I wasn't fully aware of at becoming an adult. So yeah, you got to find somebody who knows to advise you.
I think you brought up really two super great points, which is the first thing you saying, if you don't have the ambition, if you don't have the drive, that's super important to recognize and be
Mhm.
like, then you shouldn't even be trying because, you just won't have that drive to like get there, which so many people are always trying to be positive about that or be like, anybody can do it. And I think having that
Anybody
recognition is,
can. Let me just say
yeah.
anybody can, but the thing is that you have to have the desire. Like I lived for 7 years in a tiny studio apartment with a view of the garbage. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And I had to stay there because I was an assistant and I wasn't making any money,
Yeah.
and so I like, there was no outlet in the bathroom, like the carpet was like this gross brown. Like the studio apartment, I cried so many tears in there because I was so broke, I didn't have anything.
Mm,
So, but again, if I didn't have that thing in the middle of my chest, like telling me to keep going, then I would have gone back to grad school, or I would have done. So if you're feeling
yeah.
that, don't feel like you have to stick it out. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're feeling like at 3 years into this, you're broke and you're crying on your couch like I was, and you want to go back to grad school or do something else because it's too much, listen to that.
Yeah.
For me, I was broke and terrible, but there was always something in my chest being like, keep going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's interesting because I've met a lot of people who say they have drive or say they're like, I want to accomplish this, but they don't do anything about it. And I
Yeah.
think that's something where they're either in denial or they just like don't want to admit the hard work they have to put in to do that, like to have that fire in them. So, but I think it's because so many people are just like anyone can do it when it's like, no, you have to recognize that fire within you to be able to push through and do it, to be able to
Yeah,
get
for
it done.
sure. Like, that's why they say do what you love, because
Mhm.
that's the only way. If you have a hard career path, that is the only way to stick with it, because otherwise, a lot of the stuff getting to quote unquote success, a lot of it sucks. You have to put up with, people talk to you crazy, people discount you, they don't want to read your stuff, they don't want to, they don't think anything about you, people talk like there's a group of people that it's a small list, but there's a group of people who treated me very badly when I was an assistant.
Ugh.
So, you know what I'm saying? Like, so you have to, more than one day I went home crying,
Mhm.
So you shouldn't be putting yourself through that if it's not something that you really want to do, you know?
Yeah. Um, in what ways has your career made you thrive, and in what ways has it made you tired?
Oh, I'm tired all the time, girl. Uh, I mean, I enjoy the process. I love the process of creating comedy. I love the process of creating a character, digging into their story. Like, it's a very beautiful thing.
Mhm.
And of all the jobs that I could have, I feel like this is the one most suited to me. I mean, because really, a writer's room is you sit around, you tell stories and tell jokes, and then you try to sort of shape it all into like narrative.
Mhm.
So, um, I feel very blessed that I have been able to make a career out of it. But yeah, it's tiring because, you know, you end up, developing shows, and sometimes they go somewhere, sometimes they don't, or you'll get excited because it'll get bought, but then it won't get made. And
Yeah.
or, like you and I know, we've been working on a project for quite some time, and, we don't know an air date yet,
Yeah.
it takes a lot out of you. And then, like, it's such a gig job, all of us.
Mhm.
And I feel like some people don't realize that about creatives, is that every writer, every actor, every director, every lighting person, makeup person, it's a gig to gig thing. Now, there are certain people who have what are called overall deals, where
Mhm.
they are sort of, highly valued by the studio, and they are paid just to, develop projects for them. But those are not as prevalent as they used to be. And um, most of us are out here, like, when one job ends, we have to go and interview and try to find another, and that is exhausting sometimes. There are
Yeah.
people who work at jobs where, they could plan a vacation 2 years in advance, or plan, or even 6 months in advance. Like, I have a lot of friends who love to travel, and finally, after many, many years of my life being broke, I can afford to do that now. But,
Mhm.
my friend is just like, can you go to so and so in this month? I was like, girl, I don't know, because that is in between jobs. So I could be on a job, I could not be on a job. I don't know. The only time I really know that I will have off is in between Christmas and New Year. So,
Mm.
everything shuts down at that point. But, last year I was able to go to Jamaica, but this year I have to go back to work on January 2nd. So I
Oh,
really don't have
wow.
time to have a vacation that time. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. So it's just the uncertainty, and then all the and just all the back and forth. And, like, I work, I'm very blessed to work pretty often. So I just never know. I can't plan anything really, um,
Mhm.
beyond, like the next contract, because
Yeah.
I know I'm gonna need to get another job and all this different stuff. So
Mhm.
So that makes me tired, but I do enjoy the work, you know? I
Yeah,
do
for
enjoy
sure.
the work, so I guess that's how it makes me thrive, but yeah, most of it makes me tired.
I feel that because then it's like, yeah, when you see other jobs where they're like, "Oh, we get this paid time off, and I've been working here for so long, and I can accumulate vacation days and just like
Yeah.
figure it out."
That's not a thing that we can do, and, you gotta be careful too, like, you gotta, make sure you make enough to earn your health care, because that's
Mhm.
another thing that people don't realize about this job is that your health care comes through the union, and you have to make a certain amount in order to qualify for it, so it's
Yeah,
also like, oh, you gotta make sure you're making enough to get your health care, and it's yeah, it can be a challenge.
definitely. As somebody, oh, actually, are there methods you employ to subvert burnout?
Yeah. I mean, I just don't allow it to happen. Like, I cancel a lot of things, cancel a lot of plans.
Mm,
Like, if my battery's low, I'm not coming to your thing. I might feel bad about it, but I just can't. Like, literally, I just try to picture it in my mind, and if I can't picture it, then I don't go. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or like, like I said, I do things to save my energy. Like,
right.
I have a very nice team of ladies who clean my house a couple times a month. I get meal delivery services, so, you know, I don't have to spend time and energy cooking. I just
Mhm.
automate a lot of things like, my bills, and, I have a lovely assistant who helps me with like setting meetings and all those sorts of things. So, just not being afraid. I think, especially as women, I think a lot of times we're just like, no, we should be doing it. Like, it's
Mm,
lazy
yeah.
to get somebody to clean your house. It's lazy not to cook your meals. It's lazy to, get this level of help or that level of help. Men never think about that, but we do. So, I want to give somebody permission today. Like, get somebody to clean your house if you can afford it. You know what I'm saying? Like, just take certain things off your plate so that you can focus on the things and the people and the situations that you want to focus on. Like, it's not important to me to clean
Yeah.
my own house,
Mhm.
so it doesn't matter, for me to do that. Like, some people would hate it. I've tried to get my mother to let me pay somebody to clean their house, and they won't let me do it. So,
Oh,
um,
wow.
so I feel like, taking things off your plate that you can pay somebody to do is a huge part of avoiding burnout. I think that I think it's Gen X who did it. Like, I think Gen X was like, she could cook it up in a pan and she could go to work. I'm not doing it. I was like, somebody else could cook it up in the pan, drop it off at my front door. Um, and you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh,
just
yeah.
unburden yourself of the minute tasks that take up your time and energy.
Yeah, you're like, "I don't need to be any more tired with
Mm-mm.
all of this."
Especially when I'm in production, because the writers room,
Mm,
typically, anywhere from 4 to 8 hours on average. I mean, I've had jobs that have, we've been in the room for like 12 hours or whatever. I
yeah.
luckily haven't done that in quite some time. But when you're in production, like, a regular production day is 12 hours, and the way that the companies are doing things now, they give you fewer days to shoot. They have us block shooting. Then sometimes those 12-hour days can stretch into 13, 14, 15-hour days.
Yeah.
I've definitely had some of those. So when you're working that long of a time, you have to get some things off your plate. You can't just, you know.
Mhm. As someone, well, so it kind of ties in to the writer strike, but you're always somebody who I see makes her next moves like all the time. How did the pandemic and the writers actors strike affect you? Like, was it such a weird and hard shift coming to a stop? And did you find different outlets during those times, or were you kind of like relieved in the sense to be like, oh, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There were so many emotions going through that time
Yeah,
because, we were hearing such horrible things like
that's true. Yeah.
that people wanted us to lose our homes and all that different stuff. So, there was anger, there was sadness, there was, like fear, especially around the AI stuff. Um,
Mm,
so what I did was, I wrote my book, I learned how to swim, I like did a lot of different, things that I had never tried before. I used it as an opportunity to try things that I hadn't tried, or I just had time that I didn't, I even went to Amsterdam to visit Michelle Buteau.
oh my gosh.
Um, so, I was just out here, trying to live life. And it was very instructive for me, as somebody who revolves so much of their life around their job, to not have it and just
Mhm,
be like, who am I without it?
mhm.
So I got a lot of conclusions that I came to during the strike. So the strike was
Oh,
a
wow.
terrible thing, but it really crystallized some things in my mind. So I'm lucky about that.
Yeah.
That I was able to, since I had been working right before. Now, of course, I was very fortunate that I've been working pretty consistently over the years. So, it was hard for me financially, definitely. Like, I don't typically go 6 months without working. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it was not the devastating impact that it had on other people who had to, like, you know, the green envelope, grocery fund, there were so many things, the entertainment community fund, our strike fund. Like, there was a
Yeah.
lot of people who had to make, use of that. And I was lucky that I was one of those people who didn't need to.
Mhm.
So I was able to take the time to do, soul searching and stuff. Like, I didn't have to get a part-time job or anything. So,
Yeah.
I think that it was able to, for those of us who are in that fortunate position, I think we all, just like the pandemic, we got something out of it. Same thing in the pandemic, there were some people who were just, they had nothing. Like, they, were surviving on unemployment, or they couldn't work.
Yeah.
I'm a writer, so I was lucky. I was able to work over Zoom.
Oh,
So, um,
really?
so yeah, I
I
worked
didn't
the
know
entire
that.
pandemic. Yes, I didn't get a break during the pandemic. So I worked on season 5 of Insecure. Then I worked on season 2 of Kevin Can Fuck Himself. We worked on Jodie all together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I never really had a break in employment during during the pandemic. I was always working over Zoom.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
those
that's so
those yeah,
interesting. Yeah, because like animation, I felt like everybody always talked about how animation was the one that, kept the industry going, or at least they were the people that worked. We were the people that worked.
mhm.
But I didn't feel like anybody talked about the writers being like, oh, writers were still working though.
No, yeah, because I think we felt guilty, you know what I'm saying? Because literally every other job
Yeah.
couldn't really work. Like the writers and the executives could work, right?
Hmm.
But everybody else really couldn't. The directors couldn't work. The producers had nothing to produce.
Yeah.
The hair and makeup people had nothing to, and that's the reason
Hmm.
why this strike was so devastating and why it should not have gone on as long as it did, that we were forced to have it go on, because
Yeah.
I am very aware that the crew in particular was recovering from COVID shortages. And so then
Yep.
we go and do this, but to their credit, they were so supportive of us. Like the IATSE and the Teamsters, and
Hmm.
I will forever be in debt. So when it's their time to go on strike, we need to support them,
Yeah.
because they really were the thing that made our strike effective. And it needs to be effective. I think in the end, the studio heads will realize that what we did was really to help save the entertainment industry from, turning into an AI generated, you know, dearth of
Oh,
art. you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I'm like, is it right to say corporate greed? Like to turning it into just,
Yeah, I mean, for
no.
sure. I mean, these corporate that's when you have, these places that have just become huge corporations. They think about profit,
Hmm.
and it's just sad. But it's the paradigm that we're currently working in. So guess we
Yeah.
have to figure out how to be creative and make the art that we want to make in the midst of this sort of profit focused
Hmm.
business as it is right
Yeah.
now.
It's like that thing where it's like a pendulum, and it's just the pendulum swung so far this one way of like not
Yeah.
thinking about humanity and more just like, but we just want money. And so it's like this strike and everything that we're fighting for is trying to just bring that pendulum back to be like,
Yeah, that's all we
no.
wanna do. I mean, and everybody loves nobody gets into the arts for money. You'd have to literally be insane to do that, you know what I'm saying? Like, we all do it because we feel like we have something to say or whatever, and the sad
Hmm.
thing is that was taken advantage of,
Yeah.
because for years and years, people were accepting less than they deserved and letting conditions slip further and further down, in order to keep doing what they loved, right? Because we were
Yeah.
used to doing it for free or not doing much, and they're just like, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm making half of what a story editor would make in the '90s, but, I still get to
Yeah.
write, and it's still more than a lot of people make." So that sort of entered the consciousness of Hollywood, and that's the
Hmm.
reason why we ended up where in a situation where we had to do double strikes in 1 year.
Yeah. And
you
it's
know
crazy because I just talked to somebody from Canada, and I've heard this all throughout the industry, which is like, everybody's all everyone who's worked like in the 90s or 16, 20 years ago, they all
hmm
say, I'm being paid to do the same job. um like I'm being paid the same amount to do the same job 20 years ago,
yeah,
but they have more responsibility in doing more. And you're just like, that's insane that the wage probably has like gone down, or it just hasn't gone up or anything. And you're
yeah. So
just
like,
like,
I did the showrunners training program.
mhm,
So they call it being a showrunner, they call it the impossible job. And most of the showrunners that, spoke to us, they were showrunning in the '90s, in the
mhm,
2000s, when people were making like huge monies that like you could tell the difference between a co-EP now and a co-EP in the '90s or whatever. The co-EP in the '90s has a mansion in Brentwood, and the co-EP right now lives in a luxury apartment. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So it's like night and day because just even the residual situation has been so harmful to us as writers, as residuals for streaming have really tanked the amount of earnings that writers make.
yeah,
Yeah, it's really tough. Like, you know that you have more responsibility, less support, less days to shoot. Everybody's block
mhm,
shooting now, like all this different stuff. So there's like a lot of hardship, but you are getting paid less.
yeah,
It feels bad. And then just at a time when women and people of color are beginning to make a few strides in the industry, like now the pay
mhm,
has gone from up here to down here. So
yeah,
but again, we got to try to work within it, and we have to fight and advocate for ourselves where we can.
mhm,
Um, and if we want to stay in this particular business, and who knows, things may change again, because I
yeah.
would have never thought when I was getting DVDs in the mail from Netflix, back in the early 2010s, that Netflix would be Netflix. Like I couldn't even, my brain couldn't have even imagined streaming.
No one
Um,
did, yeah.
so I feel like there may be something else or may not, you just never know. You just kind of have to like move and change with the times.
Yeah. Well, I did wanna ask, what is your next goal that you're pursuing? Like, what is your ultimate goal you wish to achieve in this career or even in this lifetime?
I always wanted to have my own show. Sadly, because of the way the industry is going now, I don't know. Like I'm evaluating if that's something I want anymore. I
Yeah.
think that if I do want it, there are just certain situations that I would want to find myself in. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't think I want it in the sense of like they're only giving me a few days to shoot and my budget is so low that, I can barely hire any writers and you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like I don't want to do it like that. But if there were a situation where I could find myself where I could really have just an appropriate budget, enough support, all that different stuff, then of course that would be my number one goal. I want to write more books. I really enjoyed writing this first one, and I think it's something that I will want to do. And I have bigger goals. Like if I ever get the millions that I've always aspired to have, then I want to start a foundation that
Yeah.
helps to provide arts to underserved communities and pay off people's student loans.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
I want to. I want to be inspiring to other young women of color. Like that's really important to me to let them know that they can do anything that they want in the world. Um, and yeah, I just want to be a positive force in the world. I want the art that I make to make people laugh, bring people joy, make people think about things that they had never thought about or see communities that they had never learned about. I'm
Mhm.
a Black Caribbean woman. I feel like, the Caribbean personality has not been really explored other than Jamaicans smoking weed. And let me tell you, there's so much more to that
Mm.
country, and there's so much more to even any of the Caribbean countries
Yeah.
that we just aren't aware of. The like
Mhm.
the only mention of the Caribbean, like in Frasier, they'd be like, "Oh, he got his degree from the University of Bahamas." I was like, actually, the University of Bahamas might be better than these U.S. schools." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I feel like there's so many stereotypes about the Caribbean that people have that are not based in any knowledge. And
Yeah.
yeah, so my goal is to um, have shows that inspire people and bring them joy, make them learn about communities, and then also just to uplift other women of color in particular,
Yeah.
to or women just period, to be in this industry because I don't think people know that um, men are still very overrepresented in
Mhm.
um, anything in Hollywood,
Yeah.
in any writers, directors, um, maybe actors. It's 50-50 because they always need a woman to play the girlfriend, right? So, but we're underrepresented in the C suites and all this different stuff. So, whatever little part that I can do to um, help us achieve more parity in the business, I'm interested in doing that.
Yeah. Um, okay, so I'm gonna have a little silly thing. Is there a random animal fact you can tell me?
Animal facts?
Yes.
I don't know. Oh, I learned this thing. I don't know if this might sound gross, but I learned about the kitty G spot, which is like
What?
right between their eyes, right?
Oh,
If you
yeah.
rub if you rub right above their nose in between their eyes, they love that shit. Like, so I learned that, like, with my parents' cat. Like, somebody told me it's gross calling it the kitty G spot because, like, you don't want to think about like sexually stimulating your cat. But so maybe we shouldn't call it that. It's
Yeah.
just the what kitties, what cats like or whatever is
Yes.
if you rub in between their eyes, like right on their like third eye. They
Oh
really
my
like that.
gosh.
So
I
yeah.
realized, like, I feel like I've done that too, but then I don't do
Mhm.
it enough. But I, like, yeah, you see
Yeah, yeah,
them be, like, really calm
just rub your
about it.
kitty right there. They really like it, and it makes them purr, and they love that. But yeah, I'm a cat person. I don't have one, but my parents do. I can't have one again. That's something that I would love to have, but because I have to leave town for 3 months during production or whatever, I'm like, what am
Yeah.
I going to do with this damn cat? So so these are the things that again have to have that ambition in the middle of your chest in order to like
Mhm.
do all the things you need to do in order to live this
Definitely.
type of life. Yeah.
As part of the show, I'd like to pull out a tarot card for the episode because who knows,
Ooh.
maybe you'll need to hear it today or keep it in your back pocket for the future. So I'm using my Universal Fantasy Tarot deck. This
Okay.
is
So
just a
do I
deck.
put my energy on it? Like, is there something I should do to
Yeah, just
sustain?
I'm just gonna keep shuffling, and then you just like let me know when to stop, and we'll see what card comes out.
Stop.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
What?
You got the Eight of Swords.
I always get swords. I always get swords. Yeah, it's that's like work, right?
Yeah. If you can describe the card for me.
It looks like some sort of like crane bird, and it's got swords as legs. And then there's somebody down at the bottom looking sad.
Yeah. Um so the description says to free ourselves of the difficulties that hold us in chains, we must first understand what is really important to us. Um I feel that I don't know if that resonates with you first of all.
No, of course. I mean, feel that right now. Right now, I am working on a lot. So my life is sort of encapsulated with work. So that makes sense. Because, yeah, I
Yeah.
always get swords or cups. Cups and swords are the
Oh,
ones that I
nice.
get a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing
I
for
also
love ever.
nothing what? Oh, for love?
Nothing for love. Like, I'm always just like, "So, could you pull it again? Like, could you figure out the love?" And they're like, "Yeah, nothing. I'm not seeing." Yeah, you're
They're
probably
like
gonna, yeah, nothing. Dry, dry.
But I also want to say that it feels like, especially as you said, with the writer strike and everything coming out of it, it feels that yeah, you're reevaluating and you're really figuring out, like what life you're gonna have next and what steps you're taking to the next steps. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just like in any time of life, we have to constantly be evaluating because that's how you end up sleepwalking through your life. You got to keep
mm,
looking at it and being like, am I happy or am I just successful doing this? You know what I'm saying? Or am
yeah,
do I want to keep doing this or am I just too scared to try something else? You know?
yeah,
So I think that that is the lesson I've learned, I think, the most from being alive is that you constantly have to be looking and evaluating about what your purpose is, what makes you happy, what makes you feel peaceful, um, what lights you up, what's exciting to you. You just got to keep pushing towards that. Otherwise,
mm,
you just sort of just get to the end of your life and you'll be like, oh, well, I didn't try anything I wanted, because I was too
yeah,
scared or I was just going through the motions. That would be the worst part. That would be the worst way for me to end my life is feeling like I was just going through the motions. I definitely don't want to do that. So
yeah. Oh, well, you definitely are inspiring to like not do that.
thank you.
So you inspire me. You're already completing one of your goals. You're very
Thank you,
inspiring.
darling. You inspire me too. And thank you so much. Just publicly thank you for all your hard work on Jody. You did such an incredible job and I'm so happy with it. And hopefully we're
I
gonna
know.
see
I
it
want.
someday.
Hopefully, somebody will be able to
Yeah,
see it.
somebody will see it.
See
Like
all
even
our
if
hard
I have
work.
to even if I have to rent out a theater myself and just show it to all my friends and family, somebody gonna see it. All right.
Yeah, and
So,
then hopefully somebody will bootleg it. They'll just like record the whole thing on their
I'd
phone
be
and
like,
just post
I
it.
didn't know how it got out there. Like me just handing out DVDs on the street.
Yeah.
Like, the 90s, like on the train in New York.
Yeah, yeah. You're like, I just, it happened. Someone went out there.
I don't know who did it. I know it says Grace Edwards burned into it, but somebody must have sold it.
Well, thank you so much, Grace, for being here and talking with me. Is there anything you want to promote about yourself? And is there somewhere you want people to find you?
I will say, since we could not promote it during the time, if you have not checked out Survival of the Thickest on Netflix, starring Michelle Buteau, I am very proud of it. It is a show about a woman who gets broken up with and decides to change her life. It's very body positive and, loving and accepting of everyone. And I really hope that you check it out. As far as other things, you can find me at Gracyact, GRACYACT on Twitter. Still on Twitter, unfortunately, and I won't call it the other thing.
Yeah.
And on Instagram, you can find me there.
Awesome. Well, sadly, we are at the end. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoy this podcast, please follow and subscribe. You can also follow Tired and Thriving on Instagram at Tired and Thriving, all one word. You can email if you want to reach out, give feedback, or let me know maybe how you've been uniquely thriving at tiredandthriving@gmail.com. Thank you again, and I hope you all have a thriving week. See you next time.